All right, buckle up for a deep dive into a world that might surprise you. We're going to be looking at the strategies of a self-proclaimed pickup artist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this guy, he claims he can teach any man how to get this, seduce a woman in just one day.
One day.
One day. I know. Sounds a little out there,
A
right?
little bit, yeah.
But trust me on this, even these seemingly niche topics, they can actually offer some pretty surprising insights.
Well, and I think what's interesting about this is that it kind of taps into like everyone's fascination with social dynamics and attraction,
Yeah.
right? Like even if you're not interested in quote unquote pickup artist techniques, I think we can all relate to wanting to understand how to connect with people better, you know?
You're absolutely right, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. We're not here to endorse any potentially harmful views or anything like that, but to really kind of like dissect this material and see what nuggets of wisdom, if any, we can extract.
Yeah.
We'll be focusing on the psychology and communication techniques that might actually be applicable to everyday life.
Right. It's all about approaching it with a critical eye,
Yeah,
analyzing the tactics and motivations.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the core of his philosophy. This idea of single-day seduction and the belief that anyone can achieve it with the right skills and mindset.
And he really emphasizes building a strong identity as the foundation for success with women, which, when you think about it, it's not really all that different from what a lot of, self-improvement gurus preach these days.
Yeah, it's like you need to build this attractive persona before you even walk into a bar.
Right, exactly. And he gets pretty specific about how to do that. One recurring theme is this importance of leadership roles, like heading a committee at work or, planning a night out with friends, that sort of thing.
Makes you wonder if he's onto something there. I mean, taking initiative, showing leadership qualities, that can definitely boost confidence. What do you think, listener? Have you ever noticed a connection between taking charge and feeling more self-assured in social situations?
I think there's definitely a correlation there. I mean, when you demonstrate leadership, you're often kind of forced to step outside your comfort zone, right?
Right.
Which can lead to personal growth and increased social calibration. And those are skills that benefit anyone, not just someone who's, trying to attract a partner.
He also pushes for competitive activities,
Yeah.
things like sports or chess. His argument is that it keeps you on your toes and helps you avoid complacency.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where he's coming from. Healthy competition can be a powerful motivator. Think about it. When you're striving to improve and outperform yourself or others, you're engaged, you're focused, you're projecting a certain energy.
It's a fine line, though, right? Too much competition can be, it can be toxic and lead to all these unhealthy comparisons and stress.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance and focusing on self-improvement rather than just, tearing others down.
Now, he also has this whole thing about solo travel being transformative. He talks about backpacking across Europe in his early 20s and how it, forced him to grow. He even tells this funny anecdote about struggling to use a payphone in Switzerland. Talk about a fish out of water.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic solo travel experience, isn't it? It throws you into these unfamiliar situations, forces you to adapt, makes you rely on your own resourcefulness. It can be incredibly empowering, even if it's not always, glamorous.
And you know what? This really ties into that idea of not feeling overwhelmed by information overload, which I know is something our listeners are interested in. Think about it. Solo travel throws a ton of new information at you, new languages, new cultures, new everything. You have to learn to filter what's important, make quick decisions, navigate uncertainty.
Yeah, it's like a crash course in adaptability and information management. Those are skills that translate well to almost any area of life, really.
So we've got this foundation of identity building, leadership, competition, solo travel, all designed to cultivate confidence and a certain presence. But then he shifts gears and starts talking about how to apply these qualities in a social setting, specifically a bar or a club.
Right, right. And this is where his tactics start to get a little more interesting, shall we say.
Interesting is one way to put it. I mean, let's be honest, most of us feel a little awkward or self-conscious, walking into a bar alone. But he has this whole system for handling those initial moments.
Well, he seems to be addressing the psychology of that perceived awkwardness, right? I mean, we all have this kind of inherent desire to fit in to avoid social judgment. So he's trying to reframe that feeling of being alone as being perfectly normal.
He actually says you should internalize the idea that it's not weird to be there solo. He even suggests things like observing social dynamics or pretending to text if you're feeling fidgety.
It's like you're trying to like hack social anxiety, right? By changing your internal narrative.
But then he goes on to describe this technique he calls scanning,
Yeah.
making really strong eye contact with women as you walk into the bar to like gauge interest. Honestly, it felt a little intense.
Yeah, I mean, it does tap into the power of nonverbal communication, particularly eye contact.
Yeah.
But you're right, it can easily come across as aggressive or intrusive, especially if it's not reciprocated.
It made me wonder if there are more subtle ways to initiate interactions, maybe a shared smile or open body language or just like a genuine sense of curiosity. What do you think, listener? Do you find that direct eye contact is an effective icebreaker, or is it more likely to kind of make you uncomfortable?
It's all about reading the room and respecting boundaries, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Absolutely. And it seems like this pickup artist is all about pushing those boundaries, especially with some of his more advanced techniques. He claims they can amplify attraction and social dominance, but they also raise some ethical red flags.
Right. This is where we need to be especially critical, I think. Some of these tactics might be clever, but they also teeter on the edge of manipulation, which is a slippery slope.
One that stood out to me was something he calls the male model routine. It's all about subtly suggesting to an attractive woman that you too have been approached about modeling.
It's almost like he's trying to create this shared experience,
Right.
right? Implying that you and the target belong to this exclusive club, the attractive people.
Right. And he emphasizes that this routine works best when the woman is already attracted to you. It's not an opener, but rather a way to like escalate attraction.
Yeah, it's fascinating from a psychological perspective,
Mhm.
He's layering techniques, building on that foundation of initial attraction. The male model routine is designed to deepen that attraction by creating a sense of connection and shared status.
But it also feels a bit manipulative, wouldn't you say? Like those sneaky marketing tactics that play on our insecurities and desires.
You're absolutely right. It's a form of subcommunication, right?
Yeah.
Conveying a message indirectly through suggestion and implication. And that can be incredibly powerful because it bypasses, conscious critical thinking.
It makes you wonder, if these techniques work in this context, how else might they be used? I mean, we encounter these subtle forms of persuasion all the time in advertising, in sales, even in like everyday interactions.
It raises an important question for all of us, right? Like, how can we become more aware of these tactics, and protect ourselves from being manipulated? It's about developing a critical eye, questioning assumptions, looking for the underlying motivations behind persuasive messages.
Okay, so we've talked about building confidence, right? And using certain tactics to amplify attraction. But now this pickup artist, he introduces something completely different. He calls it the bathroom technique.
The bathroom technique.
The bathroom technique. And honestly, this one really threw me for a loop.
I can imagine why. I mean, this technique is particularly concerning because it really preys on vulnerability,
Yep.
and it exploits that sort of anonymity of a public space.
Yeah. He claims he learned it from a friend of his, who he describes as this amazing natural at seduction. What do you make of that idea of a natural listener? Do you believe that some people are just like inherently more charismatic or attractive?
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? It implies that there's, this kind of inherent charisma or ability to attract others effortlessly. But I think it's important to remember that even those who appear, naturally gifted often have underlying skills and strategies that they've developed over time.
So this friend of his, he targets women who are alone, often like
Wow.
catching them coming back from the bathroom before they rejoin their friends.
That isolation tactic right from the start raises some red flags for me. It's about removing the target from their support system, right?
Mhm.
And creating a situation where they're more vulnerable to manipulation.
And after some like initial small talk, he starts testing the waters with suggestive language to kind of gauge her sexual openness.
He's essentially screening, right? Screening for women who are more likely to be receptive to his advances. It's a calculated risk, and it could easily backfire, lead to rejection.
He uses these really subtle cues too. For example, he might mention needing to find a quote quiet place to take care of himself and see how she reacts.
Right. It's a way to introduce a sexual theme without being, overtly explicit. He's watching her reaction closely, looking for signs of interest or discomfort.
Or he'll ask if she knows of any adult video stores nearby. Again, observing her response. It just feels so calculated and manipulative.
It certainly does. And it plays into this idea, that women are attracted to boldness and sexual directness, which, is a dangerous oversimplification, of course.
Yeah, it's like he's banking on that shock value, the taboo nature of it all.
Right. Ties back to that alpha male philosophy, pushing boundaries, challenging social norms to trigger a woman's supposed primal instincts.
And if she seems even remotely receptive, he suggests they both go to the bathroom together.
And this is where it crosses a line for me. It's taking advantage of, that potential awkwardness of directly refusing his advance, especially in a situation where she might feel trapped or pressured.
And it gets even worse. He actually describes how his friend will sometimes invite the woman to watch him masturbate.
I mean, that is incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah.
It objectifies the woman, reducing her to a mere spectator for his sexual gratification. It completely disregards her agency, her right to choose, how she wants to engage sexually.
And his rationale is that if a woman's willing to do that, she'll be willing to do anything.
That's such a dangerous and disturbing assumption. It ignores the complexities of consent and the fact that people can make decisions, they later regret, especially in situations where they feel pressured or manipulated.
He then goes on to describe how his friend continues to escalate the situation in the bathroom, complimenting her body, using suggestive language, and gradually pushing for physical contact.
It's textbook coercion. He's using a combination of flattery, pressure, and that, inherent power imbalance of the situation to get what he wants.
And he actually argues that the combination of sexual tension, danger, and the taboo nature of the environment makes this technique particularly effective. It's like he's intentionally creating a scenario that's designed to exploit vulnerability and bypass consent.
It's a disturbing rationale. It's as if he's using her potential fear or anxiety, to his advantage.
He even shares a specific line his friend uses. He says, "I'm a wet guy. Maybe you have some spit." It's just so crass and disrespectful.
It's a blatant attempt to solicit a sexual act, right? Framed as this casual request. It's incredibly dehumanizing.
He claims that many women respond by performing oral sex on him right there in the bathroom. Honestly, it's hard to believe that anyone would consent to something so intimate in such a public and unsanitary environment, especially with someone they've just met.
I agree. I mean, his story seems far-fetched, designed to kind of shock and impress his audience.
Yeah.
It's crucial to recognize that this type of behavior is not only unethical, but potentially criminal.
He tries to justify it by saying it allows him to bypass the usual challenges of navigating social dynamics, dealing with friends.
That's such a dangerous oversimplification. It reduces women to sexual objects who can be easily manipulated and exploited.
And while he acknowledges that the approach is, risky, could have legal consequences, he still expresses a desire to release a CD with his friend explaining the technique in more detail.
I mean, that would be incredibly irresponsible. Disseminating this kind of information would only normalize and encourage, this harmful behavior.
Yeah, he tries to downplay it by saying it's simply about projecting sexual comfort and leading the interaction. But it's clear that this is a classic case of minimizing abusive behavior.
Right. He's trying to frame his actions as harmless flirting while completely ignoring, the manipulative tactics and inherent power imbalance involved.
He even claims to have used the technique successfully with two women at the same time, which just makes his story even less believable.
Right. It stretches the bounds of credibility. And it seems more like, a boast designed to inflate his ego than a realistic scenario.
And then he backtracks and says that the technique requires a certain level of, high value and social calibration to be effective.
It's like he's trying to deflect responsibility, right? Suggesting that only those with specific qualities can, pull off this technique, and implying that it's not his fault if others try it and fail. It's a classic manipulation tactic.
And he goes on to describe how his friend uses these specific eye contact techniques to warm up his approaches and screen for women who are more likely to be receptive. He even claims that women who stare at a man's crotch are more likely to be interested in casual sex.
That's incredibly offensive.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it reduces women to to their physical attributes, right? It completely ignores the complexities of attraction, desire, and individual preferences.
And he ends this whole section by urging his listeners to take this in and consider what's possible while, acknowledging the risks involved.
It's a dangerous conclusion. He's leaving his audience with the impression that this technique is, a viable option,
Yeah.
despite the ethical and legal ramifications.
So I think it's safe to say this bathroom technique is a clear example of how not to approach seduction. It's exploitative, it's manipulative, and it completely disrespects women's agency and boundaries.
It's a stark reminder of, the importance of consent, respect, and ethical behavior in any sexual encounter.
This guy is promoting a harmful and distorted view of relationships, and it's crucial to recognize that this kind of behavior is not only unethical, but potentially criminal.
His tactics are based on manipulation and exploitation, and his philosophy just, perpetuates these dangerous stereotypes about gender and sexuality.
It's important to remember that genuine attraction and connection should never come at the expense of someone else's dignity or well-being.
Right. True seduction is about mutual respect, shared values, and a genuine desire to connect with another person on an equal footing. It's not about dominance, control, or exploiting vulnerability.
I think this is a good place to transition into the next section, where he discusses some logistical considerations and offers some parting advice. It'll be interesting to see how he tries to justify his actions and what takeaways he offers his students.
I'm curious to see how he spins it as well. Let's see what he has to say.
So he starts by emphasizing the importance of recognizing different types of social groups, and adapting your approach accordingly.
That's actually a valid point, wouldn't you say? I mean, social dynamics can shift dramatically depending on the context.
He categorizes women into 3 groups: those who came to the bar together, those who met up there, and floaters who, move from group to group throughout the night.
It's a rather simplistic categorization, but it does reflect this awareness, right? That not all groups are created equal when it comes to social cohesion and commitment.
Right. He argues that women who came together are more likely to leave together, making seduction more challenging.
Yeah, I can see the logic there. I mean, friends often feel a sense of responsibility for one another and are more likely to intervene, right? If they feel like a friend is being pressured or manipulated.
Whereas women who met up at the bar might be more open to leaving with someone new.
Right. They haven't made that same social pact
Yeah.
and might feel, more independent in their decision making. Makes sense from a social dynamics perspective.
And then, of course, he claims that that floaters are the easiest to isolate and seduce.
Again, it's a generalization. And it's important to remember that, individual women, regardless of their social group, will have their own boundaries and preferences.
He advises his students to pay attention to these logistical factors when selecting their targets, which feels incredibly predatory.
It's a calculated approach, right, that preys on women who are perceived as, more vulnerable or less likely to have strong social support.
Okay.
It's dehumanizing,
Yeah.
and reduces women to targets to be acquired.
He also emphasizes the importance of what he calls outlasting the friend, waiting for an opportunity to isolate the target.
It's a classic manipulation tactic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wearing down resistance through persistence and
Yeah.
waiting for a moment of weakness.
Yeah. He even suggests that winning the friend's approval can be helpful, because she might eventually leave on her own, giving you a green light to escalate with the target.
It's a more subtle approach, but it still relies on manipulating those social dynamics, right? To achieve a desired outcome. It's all about control, maneuvering the situation to your advantage.
And then he stresses the importance of what he calls venue changing, getting the woman to move to a different location with you, ideally alone.
Right. It's about creating a sense of separation from her social group,
Yeah.
establishing a new dynamic where you have more control. It's a classic isolation tactic.
He then makes this interesting point. Even when a woman verbalizes her willingness to go home with you, the game isn't over.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Even though it's coming from, this manipulative perspective, consent is an ongoing process, right?
Yeah.
And can be withdrawn at any time.
He argues that you need to maintain her attraction level and manage any potential obstacles or logistical challenges that may arise.
It's a reminder that seduction, even from his perspective, is not a linear process. There are always unexpected variables and potential roadblocks.
He then kind of transitions into offering some general advice about processing failures and successes throughout the night.
And this is where his advice actually touches on some valuable aspects of, resilience and self-improvement, even if it's coming from, a questionable source.
Yeah. He argues that every interaction, regardless of the outcome, should be viewed as a learning experience.
It's a growth mindset, right?
Mhm.
Focusing on continuous improvement and learning from mistakes.
He emphasizes the importance of positive self-talk and reframing rejections as opportunities for growth.
Yeah, this is a powerful tool, for managing setbacks and maintaining motivation.
He encourages his students to view each rejection as a step closer to success.
Right. It's a way to reframe those negative experiences and maintain a sense of momentum.
He even talks about how he remains unfazed by rejections, using them as fuel to approach the next woman with even more confidence. It's almost like he's turned rejection into a game.
It's an example of how confidence can be cultivated through practice and persistence.
And he emphasizes that, it's your choice how you process experiences, and that positive self-talk can become a habit.
That's a key takeaway. Even outside of the seduction context, our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality, right?
Hmm.
And by consciously choosing to focus on the positive, we can improve our overall experience.
He even argues that by programming yourself to view everything as positive, you'll radiate a certain energy that will attract women. It sounds a little too good to be true, but I do see the logic in it.
It's a bit of an oversimplification, but it does highlight, the importance of mindset
Yeah.
and how it can influence our interactions with others.
Then he addresses the issue of friends dragging women away, claiming it's a sign that you're not projecting enough social value.
That's a pretty self-serving interpretation.
Yeah.
It's more likely that friends are simply, looking out for each other and maybe wary of a stranger who's coming on too strong.
He argues that you should view friends as helpers, not obstacles, and focus on winning their approval.
Right. It's a more nuanced approach, but it still relies on manipulating those social dynamics to achieve your goal.
Mm.
It's all about maneuvering that social landscape to your advantage.
Yeah. He encourages his students to make sincere connections with the friends, offer genuine compliments, demonstrate that they're not a threat to the social circle.
And this is where his advice actually aligns with, more ethical and authentic forms of social interaction.
Yeah.
Building rapport with friends is essential, right, for navigating group dynamics and gaining social acceptance.
He also reminds his students that the target is watching how you interact with her friends, and that negative interactions can damage your chances.
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
Women often, value their friends' opinions and might be less likely to pursue someone their friends, disapprove of.
He encourages his students to think 3 steps ahead, anticipating potential challenges and developing strategies to overcome them.
That's a valuable skill in any social situation, not just seduction. It's about being adaptable, resourceful, and thinking on your feet.
And he ends his lecture by recommending a website called The Cube, which offers this personality test that he claims can help you understand yourself better and improve your interactions with women.
Yeah, it's a common tactic, in the self-help and personal development world. Personality tests can offer insights, but it's important to approach them with a, critical eye. And remember, they're just one piece of the puzzle.
So he's wrapped up his lecture with a mix of manipulative tactics, questionable advice, and some surprisingly insightful observations about social dynamics and personal growth.
It's certainly been a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But it's provided us with a lot to unpack and analyze.
Absolutely. And now I want to turn it over to you, listener. What stands out to you from this deep dive? What insights or questions has this material sparked for you? What are your thoughts on the bathroom technique and the ethics of these types of approaches?
Man, it's been a wild ride, hasn't it, listener?
Yeah.
I mean, we really went deep into the world of this pickup artist, and it's been eye-opening to say the least. We uncovered some pretty unsettling tactics for sure, and a philosophy it's rooted in dominance and manipulation. It's a good reminder that these harmful ideologies exist, and it's important to be aware of them.
Yeah, it's been uncomfortable at times, honestly, especially hearing him describe those techniques with such confidence.
Yeah, but as we've discussed, even within this disturbing material, there are lessons to be learned.
Right. It's about recognizing those nuggets of insight into psychology, persuasion, social dynamics without, endorsing the harmful aspects of his approach.
Exactly. By understanding how these tactics work, we can become more aware of manipulation in our own lives
Mhm.
and develop strategies to counteract it.
Learn to spot those red flags, set boundaries,
Yeah.
protect ourselves from those who might try to exploit us.
Empower yourself.
Right. Absolutely. And this deep dive has also highlighted the importance of critical thinking,
Hmm.
questioning assumptions, recognizing those underlying motivations behind persuasive messages. It's like we've been given this toolkit for analyzing situations and figuring out what's really going on beneath the surface.
Right. It's about developing that discerning eye, being aware of the subtle ways in which we're influenced, and making conscious choices about how we engage with the world.
So while we definitely don't endorse this pickup artist's philosophy or tactics, we can still, walk away with some valuable insights.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that knowledge is power.
Right.
And even, exploring the dark side of human behavior can help us navigate the complexities of social interaction more effectively.
And it reinforces the importance of building relationships based on authenticity, respect, and genuine connection.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
True seduction. It's not about manipulation or dominance. It's about mutual attraction, shared values, and a desire to create something meaningful.
Recognizing and appreciating each individual for who they are, not, as a target to be conquered.
And fostering a culture of consent where everyone feels safe, respected, and empowered to make their own choices.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage you, listener, to take some time to reflect on what you've heard today.
Think about how you can apply this knowledge to your own life. Becoming more aware of those manipulative tactics, setting healthy boundaries, and building relationships based on authenticity and respect.
And here's something to ponder. If these techniques, however ethically dubious, can be effective in certain contexts, what does that tell us about the power of confidence, framing, and understanding human psychology in everyday interactions?
That's a great question to leave you with.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep questioning.